History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode 96, Botany in Costa Rica between 1603 to 1868 CE. So, if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else you'll find spoilers ahead.
What are you doing?
I'm turning the volume up!
Oh, okay.
Ah!
Hello, my name is Pete Goddard and I'm here in the HHE studio with the death apple to my pineapple. It's Mr. Ryan Weir.
Is that because we're both fruity?
I'm good for you and you will kill someone. And of course, we're joined as ever by the dazzling Dello Sperma Diary. It's the judge himself, Mr. Paul Dursley.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, Judge.
What was the thing? Dasbro
Dello Sperma Diary. It's a plant, a rather attractive red flowery plant that I found.
I don't want to be red.
Red-faced with anger.
Rage! Ryan, I've been making bonfires with the wrong kind of wood. I used that deadly tree wood and I was overcome with toxic smoke, and so I've forgotten everything we talked about last week. Wonder if you could remind us what we covered in about 60 seconds.
Yeah, I can sure do that, but when would you like me to do it, Pete?
I'd like it now.
In this week's nutrient-rich episode, Peter and I travelled to the tropics of Central America, to Costa Rica, where lush green rainforests bristle with ferns and flowers and ficus. It was an episode that brought us tales of toxic and intoxicating plants, with advice on how to avoid deadly fruit, how an all-day cigar was once common practice, and how spitting in corn juice can give you a nasty hangover. Together, we took a trip into the jungle to find Costa Rica's oldest tree, a kapok tree known as the Tree of Peace that once provided the stairway to heaven for deceased tribesfolk, but today feeds the sexual habits of horny bats. It was Botany, it was Costa Rica, it was 1603 to 1868. That was last week's episode done, summarised nicely. Nice one, son. Now we're over to a young Dursley, who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dursley. The lovely Paul Dursley.
Ah, yes, so it was. It's all come flooding back to me. What a marvellous episode it was. But my opinion is, of course, worthless. We're here just to find out, what did Dursley think? Now, Paul, would you like to give us your first impressions of the episode?
Well, it was such a long time ago when I listened to it. I needed that recap as well. Thank you very much.
And do you like what you've been reminded of?
It's difficult for me to not like Costa Rica. It's a country that I visited and I really enjoyed.
You see, we should have interviewed you.
Now, we both wanted to visit by the end of the research for this one, didn't we, Ryan?
For sure, and I still do. It sounds amazing.
It is rather good.
Tell us about it.
Well, you're doing botany.
Well, I suppose botany is almost a default activity there. There's so much of it. No, it was just a holiday.
And what did you experience there?
What did I experience? Well, life.
Amazing. So did you go into the jungle?
Oh, yes. There's lots and lots of jungle, yes.
And what did you see?
Loads of hummingbirds, toucans, quetzals. It was a while ago now. It's sort of nice to remember it. I sort of went to 3 or 4 places, and I even had a plane and a ship to myself on this holiday once. It was quite funny.
That sounds amazing.
I think it was like a group thing, but there was nobody else in the group, because they heard I was there and decided to boycott it. So I arrived at the side of this lake, and there were 2 boats there, exactly the same size, and everybody got on one boat. So I was going there and say, "Oh no, not you." So I went to another boat, and I sat on this one boat. But of course, it got there first, which was rather good.
The upside of ostracism.
Yes, I had my first encounter with a volcano in Costa Rica.
Nice. And you didn't come across any of the dangerous things of Costa Rica, like the wood that will kill you, or the animals that will kill you, or the bees that will kill you?
Yeah, you didn't fall into a crevasse and get stung by bees, did you?
I can't remember doing that.
Feels like the kind of thing you'd remember, unless you got stung enough, in which case, yeah, you could easily forget.
To answer your question, not knowingly to all of those.
Fair enough. But it is a particularly dangerous place.
No, it's not.
Well, it is if you're a botanist, because you find yourself out in the rainforest and there's plenty of things in there that are going to kill you. I told you that one story about the guy who found himself trapped in a crevasse and being stung to death by 8,000 killer bees. But crevasses and bees aren't the only thing to watch out for. One other story that I found, and I didn't tell during the episode, is that of the unfortunate end of a botanist called William Heinrich Neverman. He was killed in Costa Rica in 1938, and apparently one evening he decided to go looking for plants in the dark, and it turns out that his neighbour thought the light from his 2 lanterns were the eyes of a puma. So he raised his rifle and shot him through the chest.
Oh, no.
Or at least that was his excuse.
Yeah. And he had been sleeping with his wife by some coincidence.
But one of the most deadly places for a botanist in Costa Rica is a 6-foot deep, 10-foot long cave in the heart of the volcanic mountains. Now, it doesn't sound very dangerous, does it? It sounds pretty small.
I have a slight fear of caves, so I'm already slightly tense, but carry on.
Yeah, but a 6-foot deep, 10-foot long cave, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be that
Come
terrified
on,
of.
gentlemen, what's the term for a fear of caves?
Spelunkophobia?
Let's just say it's that. Anyway, despite its size, it is considered a hellhole. It's so much so that the authorities have actually surrounded the entrance with paintings of skulls and crossbones as a warning to people to stay away from it. And that's because it is straight up a death trap for anything that goes inside. Right, it's said that the cave is littered with the remains of birds that have flown inside and instantly dropped dead. And that's because the cave is almost entirely filled with carbon dioxide.
Oh.
So much carbon dioxide, in fact, that it's said to produce 30 kilograms of CO2 every hour.
Wow.
It's a lot. And the problem with that is that animals, including humans, can't sense CO2, right? So they can't smell it, they can't see it. So you just sort of wander in, and just within moments, you're completely asphyxiated, drop down dead.
Well, yeah, it's not the CO2, it's the lack of oxygen.
I agree. So it's known, unsurprisingly, as Cueva de la Muerte, or the Cave of Death. And the carbon dioxide is a natural phenomenon. It's created by activity from the nearby volcano, which sits on the San Miguel geological fault. And so the CO2 just comes up from cracks in the ground and sits in this cave. And apparently you can find a local who will happily take you to the cave and give you a demonstration of its deadly power. Apparently they reach inside the entrance of the cave with a flaming torch. The torch just instantly goes out, smothered by the CO2. But it's not just a tourist trap. Botanists are there, they study the cave, and they're looking at certain species of plants that have evolved to live within the cave itself under these extreme conditions. Apparently they've developed these unique adaptations, thicker leaves and longer roots, which help it survive these massive CO2 levels. Apparently some plants show a form of dormancy where they actually slow down their metabolic processes when the CO2 is at its worst, and then conserve their energy until the CO2 lessens, and then it just quickly thrives and then goes back to sleep again. Pretty cool stuff.
But I thought CO2 was good for plants.
Not that amount. I looked that up too, because I thought that.
They produce oxygen, they fix carbon into their body. So that's where they get the carbon from.
Yeah, but there are limits, aren't there? If too much oxygen, I would imagine it wouldn't do us much good if it was nothing but oxygen.
Or a cave full of methane.
Which wouldn't surprise me is also on offer in Costa Rica. It seemed to have things that are called the thing of death. We've got the apple of death. We've got the cave of death. Do you have any other of death things there, Ryan?
No, I didn't find any more, but I'm sure there are. Just out there waiting.
Begs the question, why don't they just shut it up? Bung a load of concrete down it.
A cave of methane. Sounds like my bedroom in the morning.
Yeah, some people like an early morning smoke. Ryan can't take that risk.
Yes, it's like sort of all these noxious gases coming out of cracks.
I will be a tour guide and I will dip a
Lord.
flaming torch into Ryan's... No, let's stop there.
Ryan's crevasse.
Well, I think that goes on to the colon gags, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Did you like
the Costa Rican colon.
I have used many a colon.
I'm sure you have.
Well, Ryan, I wanted to tell you guys about something that was normally dangerous, but isn't in this particular case, also from Costa Rica. So
Okay.
I'm trying to find the lighter side of life in Costa Rica rather than the permanent death traps that seem to exist. So I want to tell you about Pocho, and Pocho is a Costa Rican crocodile.
Oh, okay, nice. They've got those too, have they?
They do indeed. They have caiman and they have crocodiles. So
In the river of death.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this one is not so deadly a crocodile, actually, because there was a Costa Rican fisherman called Chito Shedden. He was also a tour guide, I guess, and a bit of a naturalist. And he was on his travels and he found this thin and dehydrated crocodile, I guess, by the banks of a river. And he looked a little bit closer and it looked like the beast had been shot in the head through the eye.
Oh my God.
I know, but this was a tough old croc. So Cheeto did the thing that you and I would obviously do, which was take the wounded predator and pop it in his boat to take home.
Okay. I mean, was it a baby one or is this a big old croc?
It was an adult crocodile at that time, I believe. And he nursed it
Okay.
back to health, feeding it, and he petted it and hugged it, and he slept with it at night.
Yeah.
Paging Joseph Banks.
Right, indeed. Now, he had to do it quite furtively at the start because you have to have a permit, apparently, to raise a crocodile in Costa Rica. So he hid it in a secret hidden pond in a nearby forest until he managed to get his permits. And then he officially owned, in inverted commas, his new crocodile friend.
This is an odd story.
This is an odd story because he tried returning the crocodile to the wild, but it wouldn't go. So he just let it hang out with him and he trained it to come when called. And then he got Pocho started to pay his way as Cheeto starts putting on a weekly show for visitors of him swimming with this crocodile and kissing it on the snout and doing a lot of things you would not normally do with a crocodile.
Okay.
Yes.
It went on like this for years. Eventually, Pocho dies of natural causes in October 2011. They had a public funeral for Pocho where Cheeto sang to the dead crocodile. And I know you're going to hate this, Ryan.
Turned him into handbags.
Not quite. Pocho's taxidermied remains are on display in the Siquires Town Museum.
Just let it go. Stop hanging on to these things.
I like a bit of taxidermy, especially bad taxidermy.
I understand. But don't worry, Ryan. Cheeto has befriended a new crocodile, imaginatively named Pocho 2. Although, given this one hasn't been shot in the head and probably doesn't have the same brain damage that caused this first crocodile to be kind and nice, there's some doubt as to whether this one will be quite as friendly as his predecessor.
I mean, I'd quite like a crocodile friend, but I don't think I want to sleep with it.
Yeah, I'd like a crocodile friend, but there's always the lingering doubt in the back of your mind that actually he might turn on you at any moment. I've never understood people who live and love these large predators because you think surely instinct could kick in at any minute.
I ate one in Zimbabwe. Surprisingly like chicken.
Okay, Ryan, have you got anything else Costa Rican from the time? Well, not the time period. As we know, it was a very difficult topic and time period combo.
I was surprised at that because I would have thought that would have been sort of, I suppose, yeah, the great age was sort of Victorian times, wasn't it? A little bit after your time window.
No, yeah, there was tons of stuff. It was just tantalisingly either side of the time period, I found.
It was, that's true. Very few Costa Rican botanists during that time that I could find that merited us talking about. But I'm glad you mentioned the Victorian era, Paul, because botanists that discover new species of plants have the pleasure of giving them a new name. And usually that name is in Latin, and they're either sort of straightforward descriptions of the plant or they're poetic. And during the 17th and 18th centuries, dictionaries were being published to list all of these plants. And during the Victorian era, a new form of code emerged as people started to use these names to send encoded messages. So basically, if you wanted to let someone know that you were wishing them good luck, you'd send them a bunch of flowers, and those flowers might contain a mix of lupins and hollyhocks and white heather and ragged robin that signified sending you good luck. If you forgot someone's birthday and you wanted to apologise, you'd send them moonwort. If you wanted to secretly invite someone to a dance, you'd send them a mix of geraniums. And if you went to that dance and your lover abandoned you there to go and dance with someone else, you might send them a bunch of basil, which means I hate you and watch out for my revenge.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned geraniums because geraniums famously smell like dead people.
Hang on, my mum bought me basil a couple of weeks ago.
So there you go. It's called floriography, or Victorian flower language, and it was the 19th century equivalent of sending a text message or like an emoji. And supposedly it was started in Europe by a Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. It was a feminist poet who was married to the English ambassador to Turkey. And she wrote some letters home in 1717 in which she described something called a Turkish salam, which was a secret language used by the clever women working in a harem to secretly communicate with each other using flowers without raising suspicion from their guards. And apparently, when her letters were published in 1763, the idea of a flower code quickly spread among, the fashionable young. These were people who loved the idea of sexy women in harems sending secret illicit messages and kind of wanted to do the same thing. And by 1810, a French publisher was selling flower almanacs that listed various combinations of flowers and their hidden meanings. This immediately became a bestseller, and by 1923 there were 98 different flower dictionaries on sale. So you would get one, your friend would get one, and then you could sort of send each other flowers and it would mean a specific thing.
Oh man, what accidental messages have I been sending through my life?
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't just flowers either. You could send people plants too, fruits and vegetables. So a cabbage was said to look like a wad of cash, so it meant send me money. Walnuts looked like brains, so it was a way of telling someone you thought they were very clever. A pineapple also means you are perfect, and I don't quite know why a pineapple would mean perfect, but
I'm glad you asked that. I've got something on that a little later.
Oh, very nice. Well, but unfortunately, with the end of World War I, floriography just largely vanished and coded bouquets of flowers disappeared, with only a few remaining, like lilies for a funeral, which are code for my sympathy. But perhaps it is making a comeback because in 2011, Kate Middleton, who married Prince William, she deliberately chose flowers for her bouquet that had hidden messages within them. The bunch included myrtle and ivy, which represents love and marriage, hyacinths, which represent the love of sport, and Sweet William, which is a flower which means gallantry, but is also a reference to, of course, her husband. And so in that spirit, I will be gifting you both a bunch of green ivy, which means let's be friends.
I'll take it. Better than the Sharon Osbourne approach of sending a box of poo to her enemies.
Yeah, that's not nice.
It's more direct. You know what she means, though. If I got a bunch of basil, I'd be like, oh, nice, basil. They'd be like, he didn't get it at all. This was hopeless.
In the UK, up until recently, it was illegal to send a dozen dead roses to somebody because it was considered a death threat.
Oh, is that right?
So what happens if the roses were delayed in transit and they died?
That's it. You could be arrested.
Well, that is... I didn't know about that. It's the hallmark cards of their day.
Yeah, it really was.
That was good stuff, right?
Something to make money out of nothing, and for gullible women to fall for.
Such a romantic outdoors, isn't he? Hey Ryan.
Hey Pete.
You earlier asked about why the pineapple might be considered your perfect, and I think I have a half an answer to that.
Go on then.
So talking about pineapples in general, there was evidence of pineapples being cultivated as far as 1200 to 800 BCE in Peru. In the 1400s, pineapple was widely distributed and it was a main food of Native Americans across the continent. But the first European to encounter the pineapple, I think we mentioned it, was Christopher Columbus, who found it in Guadeloupe in 1493. He brought it back to Spain and called it Piña des Indes, meaning the pine of the Indians. The first known illustration, I tweeted it a few days ago actually, was from Oviedo's Historia General de los Indias, which we also mentioned in the show. And he loved the pineapple. He called it the most beautiful of any fruits I have seen. I do not suppose there is in the whole world any other so exquisite and lovely appearance. Delicate fragrance, excellent flavour. Of the 5 corporeal senses, the 3 which can be applied to fruits, and even the 4th, that of touch, it is excelling above all fruits.
That's true. I think it is up there as one of the top fruits, is it not?
It is absolutely fantastic. The pineapple makes it out the Americas in 1550 or thereabouts when the Portuguese start moving it from Brazil to India. But it wasn't successfully cultivated in Europe until some Dutch growers managed it at the end of the 1600s. But over time, basically, it was hard to grow. You had to either import it from miles and miles away or create these elaborate greenhouses and heating establishments. So it became really expensive. So pineapples, as a result, become a symbol of wealth, a really valued symbol of wealth. So much so that people rarely ate them. They were used often for display at dinner parties, and you just keep bringing your pineapple out for dinner party after dinner party till you had a sort of rotten mess in the middle of the table, I guess.
But you could rent them as well for a dinner party.
Rent a pineapple.
Yes, to put on your table.
Now there's a business idea.
So consequently, they become symbolic of wealth and fineness, if you will. So I think this might be where your pineapple symbolism comes in there.
Okay.
They start popping up in art and architecture, and one of the most notable is the place called the Dunmore Pineapple. And this is a building that was put up in Falkirk in Scotland in 1761 by the 4th Earl of Dunmore. And it was a hothouse, and they had a furnace for heating the area. And the cupola, or the dome of the building, is sculpted in the shape of a giant pineapple. In 1995, that building was ranked the most bizarre building in Scotland. And I'm also delighted to announce that it apparently is available to rent for up to 4 people, which could be us.
It makes me wonder if pineapples then were similar in shape and size as today, because I can only imagine that, agricultural methods over the years have sort of got it to a point where it's much larger, much more juicy than perhaps the original pineapples, which I imagine much smaller and drier.
I think they're likely larger, but when you look at the pictures, even the picture from Oviedo, right from the earliest drawing we have, it's highly identifiable as a pineapple. You wouldn't mistake it at all. It's very in shape, it's very similar, and the sort of skin texture seems to be very much the same. So I would imagine they're probably bigger now, because I think everything's been bred to be bigger, hasn't it? Now, you may have noticed, guys, that when you eat pineapple, you get a tingle in the tongue.
I love that tingle.
This is because the pineapple contains bromelain, which is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. So what's happening here is the pineapple, whilst you are breaking down the pineapple, is fighting back a little bit and breaking down you, breaking down the proteins in your tongue. So I ask you, Ryan, who is eating who here?
We're both eating each other.
So anyway, that's pineapples, and I love a pineapple. I think it's the king of fruits.
So is that why my tongue stings when I eat a lot of pineapple?
Yeah, you're dissolving your tongue, essentially, with pineapple juices.
I was going to say I prefer a peach myself. A nice peach that you dunk in boiling water so you can rip its skin off.
That went from delicious fruit to horrible tortures.
Slightly psychopathic.
And you can squeeze it and it then pops out of its skin.
For me, only the mango can rival the pineapple in glorious fruitness.
No, I don't like mango. It's got a weird aftertaste.
There you go. The judge has spoken.
Shocking.
Right, talking about fruit.
Yes, we were.
I have some more fruity facts.
Dazzle us.
All right, so during the episode, I talked about the world's most dangerous tree, which grows death apples on it.
Yes.
And during my research, I came across another apple fact, and I thought I'd bring it here. In Canada, in 2016, there was a bunch of scientists who gathered around a table, and in front of them was a Petri dish that contained a human ear. But not just any old human ear, this was one that they had carved into the shape of a human ear from a piece of apple. Now that doesn't sound very impressive, right? But it gets a bit weirder because this apple ear isn't an apple anymore. Because what the scientists had done is they had scrubbed away all the apple's original cells, leaving essentially a cellulose mesh, and replaced the apple cells with human cells. Cells that came from cervical cancer, as it turns out. So they'd successfully turned a piece of apple into a cancerous human ear.
There's so many questions.
Now, you might be forgiven for thinking that this is just some sort of mad science experiment, but it's actually an attempt at proving that you can manipulate biological systems, a type of sort of biohacking. And so instead of messing around with genetics, they were looking to see if they could just change how cells behave when you change their physical environment. And this was a success. So traditionally, if you wanted to create human tissue from another thing, a substitute, you'd be looking at animals, right? Organs similar to our own, things like pigs, right? But this discovery means that we can actually start looking at using plants instead, because plants come in a variety of different shapes and and sizes with a whole different variety of structures within them. And those structures, it turns out, in some cases, are perfect for different physiological needs. And they're also much cheaper. So if you've got like a shoulder injury, right, and you need a rotator cuff replacement, traditional biomaterials could cost you around $800 for 1 cubic centimetre of tissue. But a single slice of apple costs less than a penny. And the best part is that it won't break down in the body or be rejected because it's not considered to be a foreign body. So there's another example they gave, which is the asparagus stalk has tiny capillaries in it, which runs all the way down through the stalk. And these are the exact right size and shape for repairing spinal cords. So there are obviously regulatory challenges that are going to come with that.
You think?
Right? But the potential is genuinely exciting for, modern medicine in the future. We could be looking at a future where people are walking around with an avocado spleen or a banana nose.
Well, if you have an asparagus spine, does your wee smell funny?
It's a recessive thing, so some people do and some people don't.
I can't smell, so...
Pete doesn't eat veggies, so... Well, next time you eat asparagus, I'll come and smell your wee.
Well, that's an offer you can't refuse.
I think I can.
I'm not suggesting I do it while you're urinating. I'm just saying bring me a sample of your urine and I will smell it.
Well, if you're not going to fully commit, Ryan, I'm not interested.
So what vegetable do you want to graft onto yourself?
Brings new meaning to I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
Juicy melons.
End of section.
That's everything we have today. We've come to the end of the line. It's time to step into the dock and prepare to face the people's judge. Judge Dursley, are you ready to give your verdict?
I am.
Then will the defendants please rise?
I have risen.
I have too. Your Honour, as usual, shall we start proceedings by first asking for your verdict on the factual content?
Well, gentlemen, as I've been to the country in question, some of the facts that you gave I can attest to.
Ooh, that's good.
So, assuming you haven't slipped in a few porkies,
How dare you?
We wouldn't do that.
I think you might be surprised. I shall give you B+.
Wow, I am surprised.
Nice, that's nice, we'll take it. Okay, and now, Your Honour, your view on the entertainment value of the episode.
Well, I think, gentlemen, your taking a slightly longer time between episodes may have paid off, because some of the sketches were actually amusing this time.
Yay!
Unusually positive response.
So, I think I shall give you a modest mark of C+.
I'll take C+, that's
not
good.
Bad. And finally, and I'm quietly confident on this one, Ryan, your score for Dursley Factor.
Why are you quietly confident on this one?
Because I think you have a soft spot for Costa Rica and it's going to break in our favour.
I think you'd be right.
Yes!
Nice.
I have a bit of a soft spot for Costa Rica. I just think, in a country that, okay, it did have a few waivers, but has basically been a democracy since independence, given the part of the world that where it is, how it's trying to help out with the environment. Although I'm not so sure about having all this carbon dioxide coming out of its volcanoes. That's not very good for global warming,
Very careless.
Should get some corks. Cork up their crevices.
There might be an enormous explosion and all the gas would build up. So, are you sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Well, we're standing, famously.
I shall give you A-.
Yes!
Wow, your quiet confidence, Pete, paid off.
It did, didn't it?
I thought we were in the court of death.
of death. Well, that brings us to the final verdict. But before the judge passes his ruling, Ryan, you have the opportunity to enter a plea. If you choose to do so, please do it now.
No, I'm absolutely not going to say anything this time because I think that we're on a roll. So let's just hear what the judge has to say.
Very wise. Your Honour, the defendants stand before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, I think I have.
And so I ask respectfully for your ruling.
I shall give you a straight B.
Nice! A killer
Hurrah!
bee!
A killer bee! Stick that in your crevice.
You wouldn't want to be in your crevice, would you?
And that is it. That's our show for this week. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things we've talked about on the show, or if you just want to say hi, you can reach out to us on social media or through our website, which is hhepodcast.com, or you can email Pete and Ryan at hhepodcast.com.
That's right, we'd love to hear from you, and you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
And one way to definitely feature is to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, where your recommendation can bring the show to new listeners.
That's right. Now, if you are on Mastodon, Facebook, Instagram, or X, you can find us at HHE Podcast. And if you subscribe to those, you'll get an alert every time we post any trivia tidbits, news, and photos of fruit.
And we'll be back again soon with our next episode, Darkness in Venezuela in 1967.
The Summer of Love.
That's right. But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
Well, by the way, 1967 was a very good year.
Was that when you were born?
Goodbye.
We learn a little more about him every week. And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
You've been listening to...
So guys, there's one thing I didn't talk about in the episode, because I was talking about plant substances that you use for intoxicating purposes. But there was another sacred plant, and that was, of course, cocoa or cacao, depending on how you want to go about pronouncing it.
Yeah, Theobroma cacao is the plant, isn't it?
Look at you, botanist.
Yeah, look at him go. He probably picked that up when he was in Costa Rica.
Yes, it was. It was in Costa Rica. I was. You don't mind me jumping in, do you?
No, jump.
I was in Costa Rica. We were actually, no, it was in Ecuador. Anyway,
Forget it then. All right, should we go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah,
Smash subscribe.
yeah, it's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.